Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are on a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com.
Hello and welcome back to Arn. This is Paul Bromwell, and today I'm joined by none other than the Hall of Famer, the creator of the Spine Buster, the founder of the Four Horsemen, and the man who won multiple tag team championships with multiple partners in multiple promotions and multiple decades. He's AA, the enforcer, Arn Anderson. Arn, how you doing this week, my friend?
What you just said, in essence, is I'm an old sumbitch who somehow, some way, is still around.
Not at all. It just talks about your longevity, how skilled you were with so many different partners, so many different promotions that recognized you as a great champion. That's all it was. I got to keep things fresh, these intros.
Let's keep it real, too, okay?
Oh, man.
I am an old sumbitch, but you know what? I'm so thankful to still be here and doing this show with you, my man.
Oh, good stuff, man. Well, hey, we're having fun together, and how could we not, Arn? We're talking about some of the best days of your career, reliving these classic Jim Crockett Promotions memories, and this week is no different. We're jumping right in to November 1987. Last week, we talked about the death of rock and roll at the hands of the Horsemen, and this week, we're taking a look at the match between you and the Road Warriors, ultimately, at Starrcade Chi-Town Heat. And we're going to go there. We're going to take that big, long march through November to get there. And who is on the dance card for the Horsemen in Chicago? As I mentioned, none other than Hawk and Animal. But before we get to Chicago, you have a full calendar, and we're going to kick it off at a matinee show at the Asheville Civic Center. And on the show, Barry Windham and Nikita Koloff defeat you and Tully in one of the featured contests of the event. And later that night, the four of you wrestled again, this time in Miami. All right, so you're in Asheville earlier on that day. Now you're in Miami that night at the Eddie Graham Sports Complex. You and Tully come out on top in this one. And let's just pause here for a moment, Arn. On the same day, two different states, you and Tully wrestle Barry and Nikita in featured contests at two separate venues. As I said, what in the world? I want to emphasize this a lot because there's been a lot of talk about the schedule. You and I were just talking about it before we jumped on here. And my goodness, here you are in this position. This had to be taxing in a variety of ways. Talk about this a little bit.
Well, without the private planes, it would have been impossible. You cannot leave I would imagine that afternoon show was 1 o'clock probably in Asheville. You can't walk out the door at 3:30 or 4 o'clock and expect to go get a flight that'll get you to Miami. You're going to have to connect through Atlanta or Charlotte or somewhere. So without the private planes, forget about it. But still, that's one of those things that when you have an afternoon show, you got to loosen up. You know, we still had to get up early enough and find a gym that was open. Still got to get to the gym every day because that's your self-preservation, man. When you're getting banged around by guys like we were getting banged around with, Nikita Koloff and Barry Windham, you better get up and take care of yourself and go to the gym. So that cuts into your sleep time. You do your afternoon show, you grab a quick shower, and as quickly as you can, you throw your boots back on, you throw on some sweats, you get out to the private aviation, and you take off down to Miami again. And you got to remember, you got to eat real light between those two shows. You can't just get on there and you're starving, because if you got up early and went to the gym, some of us can't eat breakfast either. So you hadn't really had a meal yet till you get on that private plane, and you got to be careful about what you eat. When you get to like Miami, it's not like you just pull in the private aviation and jump in a limo and you're right there. Sometimes there's traffic jams. Sometimes there's delays. Sometimes there's weather in Florida. Even in November, you still get thunderstorms. So there's all kind of things that can happen that make it very, very difficult. But the fact is, you just, hey, cross your fingers and hope for the best.
My goodness, Arn. I mean, some of us, I'll talk about just traveling in general, just going to the airport and doing the whole deal. The whole travel deal can be taxing and tiring enough, let alone doing what you're doing when you think about the physicality of the wrestling business and doing that 2 different times within the same day. But you're traveling in between all of it. Got to be exhausted by the time it's all over.
Oh, yeah. And the fact of the matter is, after Miami's over and you walk out of the arena at 11 o'clock that night, now what? Let's see what the next day is. So,
yeah, here we go. On the second, here we go. You guys are back to Greenville. So you were in Miami on the first. You're going back to Greenville on the second. You and Barry wrestle in a Texas death match at the Greenville Memorial Auditorium. Barry Windham is one of the best workers to ever put on a pair of boots, as we've talked about. You told us he was so good he could lull you to sleep. You're having a Texas death match with him the next day, flying back to the Carolinas. So it's just incredible what you did as wrestlers back in those days, going from venue to venue. And but this one is another fantastic match. And I have to ask the question here: when you and Barry have the abilities you both do, what do you make of this booking, creative, and the matches? You're telling amazing stories, you're working well. Obviously, we've talked about the prestigious Western States Championship, but my goodness, talk about putting these matches together.
Well, anytime that I had the luxury of sharing the ring with Barry Windham, forget about what the prize was. The Western States Heritage Championship, Barry held for a long time. And we kind of make a joke of it because it hadn't been anywhere history-wise prior to that, and it wouldn't really go that many places afterwards. But that was not what it was about. The prize was getting to share the ring with Barry Windham, who was one of those rare guys that only comes along every now and then. He was never hurt to the degree that he missed a town. He was always on time. He was a professional. Barry was so talented. I mean, most people just would watch him, and it was like he was so good for so long, and every time you saw him, you kind of took him for granted. This is a guy 6'6", 260 pounds, that moved like a gazelle. And until you've been in the ring with him, guys like him, you just couldn't truly appreciate it. But the guy was just incredible.
Hey, folks, it's time to take your podcast game to the next level. And you certainly want to get your almighty push. My God, we have to have a push, right? We'll get that over to adfreeshows.com. Now, I'm telling you, if you're a fan of Grilling JR, adfreeshows.com has the entire episode library, and it's got no ads. 0 ads, zilch, none. Ad-free and on video starting at just $9. Did you hear what I said? $9. You spend more than that at Starbucks, for God's sakes. 2 mornings. But that's not all, folks. We got tons of bonus content, including my after-hours roundtable, where drinking was involved with Eric and Tony. You simply will not find a better value in all of wrestling. Hey, look, don't make me go red ass, because by God, you know I will. Hurry over to adfreeshows.com right now and sign up. And I thank you.
Now, this one is a Texas death match. Is this just to add a layer of, I guess, creative or something new to freshen up the match a bit, do you think?
Yeah, and it sounds like when we're running through days and we keep hearing cage matches and death matches and all this, the opponents are different. That's what I want everybody to listen for, is it may be a death match with Barry on this given night. The previous death match we were in, it could have been with Robert Gibson or Ricky Morton or any of those guys. It just, like you said, it added a layer of violence and jeopardy, and it was more than just two guys wrestle and one gets a 1, 2, 3, and that's it. And a lot of times that's plenty. Sometimes you need another layer of aggression or violence or whatever you want to call it.
Well, listen, you stay in the Carolinas the next day, and it's the Winthrop Coliseum in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It's a TV taping November 3rd, and at this taping, you and Barry once again wrestled in a Texas death match, and that's okay. That's kind of what you're doing on this run right now with Barry when you're making this loop. But we're going to jump ahead to November 7th. Jim Crockett Promotions records television at the TBS studios in Atlanta, and believe it or not, you did not appear on this episode of World Championship Wrestling, but Jim Cornette cuts a promo with the Midnight Express, advertising a match for the next night in the Omni, where you and Tully would team up with the Midnights to take on the Rock and Roll Express, Chris Champion and Sean Royal. Arn, you got two of the best teams ever, the Horsemen and the Midnights, facing arguably the best babyface duo of all time, the Rock and Roll Express at the Omni. This kind of attraction sounds like it would be hard to beat, my friend. Any memories of this particular booking?
That's unusual. I don't have any recollection of that, and that really happened.
Yeah, it did happen. Yes, sir.
Sean
November
Royal
7th.
and Chris Champion were the Rock and Roll's partners.
That's correct.
Do you have any results?
I just know that that what went down there as far as not exactly who won the championship match. I just have the match that was put together for that card that night.
So that was a random 8-man.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Rock and Roll and those guys versus us in the Midnight.
Yeah, and I don't mean any disrespect to Chris Champion and Sean Royal, but come on, which one of these is not like the other, as Conrad would say? And it sounds like you don't really have any memories of working with this pair.
I really don't, and that's unusual because that's so unusual. I should remember that. I don't even want to guess what the outcome was because you could have went either way with that.
Yeah.
I would expect Horseman and Midnight Express to go over.
Absolutely.
But
who's to tell? But maybe it was a way to help those guys. Maybe it was just a move to try to elevate them as a young babyface tag team. And what a way to do it.
You know what? You may be right on with that. And I'm sure it was competitive. I mean, we're professional. We wouldn't take, the guys had something to offer. We wouldn't have ate those guys up by any stretch of the imagination. It's just unprofessional, not the thing to do. So it was a competitive match, I can guarantee you. Don't know what the result would have been, but it's an unusual book. Hey, having us with the Midnight Express and an 8-man, that alone is worth the price of a ticket.
You got that right. Well, on November 7th, we're still on the 7th here. They're doing a worldwide taping. You and Tully defeated Cougar Jay and another enhancement talent at the 16-second mark. When you hit Jay with the Gourd Buster and earned the pin, David Crockett conducted a ringside interview with you and JJ and Tully. And you're talking about the Road Warriors at Starrcade. And, buddy, I've got the clip for us to watch it. Let's check it out.
Go on, tag team champions, here they go. Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, two of the four horsemen with J.J. Dillon. Double team. Is this what they're going to do to the Road Warriors? Well, it's what they have to do. They have to stay on top of them. Have to stay on the offensive side of them because if not, that, the 3 count will happen to them, David. They know it. Hey, listen, I'm going to talk to these guys. Okay. They are the World Tag Team Champions. There's no doubt about it. And they have to do it against the Road Warriors. Once again, the double guard buster. A shot in the back for good measure. And then as Cougar Jay is hoisted up, face down very hard. It's against the Road Warriors during Starrcade. David Crockett. All right, the World Tag Team Champions, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson with J.J. Dillon. The Road Warriors, Chicago.
David Crockett, all the experts are calling the shots. They look at the Road Warriors. They look at them in that gym. Bench pressing 550, squatting 750, deadlifting 800. Both of them, two of the strongest men in all of professional sports, voted Tag Team of the Year the last 3 years. And look at Blanchard and myself, what they see on the surface, two average wrestlers, everybody thinks. But the bottom line is, what we are not average. We are the incumbents. We are the Four Horsemen. We are the elite. When we come to Chi-Town here in Chicago, we don't have to prove anything. We're the champions. Parker, let me explain something to you, Road Warriors. After the match is over and you're not champions, what are you going to tell the guys in the gym? When you go back to the gutter, you say, we grew up in the gutter. We worked for everything we had. We were born with a silver spoon in our mouth. We're used to the good things in life. So when you get beat, unless you beat us at Starrcade 87, go back to the gutter, explain to all the people in the gutter why we're the champions and you're not.
You know, David Crockett, the fan mail that JJ gets for the Horsemen, you'd think that Flair shouldn't show up, Luger shouldn't show up, Arn and myself shouldn't show up. But you know, it's been like that way a long time. I've been wrestling for 10 years. I've held title lists this long. I got more wins over Dusty Rhodes than any man alive. And if you think I'm not going to come to Chicago, the hometown of the Road Warriors, and at least put up a fight, you're sadly mistaken, because this is what it's all about. This is why the Horsemen can have the fast women, the fast cars, and anything they want. We can walk around arenas, bars, any place we want to go, any woman, just like that, because we're the Horsemen. Not because we're the Road Warriors or Dusty Rhodes or Ronnie Garvin or anybody else. We're the Horsemen. We're the elite. We are what makes professional wrestling today. And just like Ric Flair said, diamonds are forever, and so are the Horsemen. Right here, baby. Chi-Town Heat, Chicago. Starrcade's coming.
Look at that old Starrcade graphic, man. I'm getting excited for Starrcade.
And for sure, nobody gave us a chance. Think about it. Starrcade, I wish we hadn't moved it to Chicago or any place else. It belongs in Greensboro.
We're going to talk about that for sure.
But the fact of us against the Road Warriors, nobody gave us a chance in their hometown, which is really the only advantage we needed, because I think they took us lightly. I didn't think they would ever think we could even be competitive, and that was part of their mantra. They didn't think anybody on earth could hang with them, and to be honest with you, very few people could. We just happened to be two of those guys.
And that you did, Arn. And my goodness, as you and I were talking and watching that clip, guess what I found November the 8th? So right after this, as Cornette alluded to the previous day, you, Tully, and the Midnight Express, you're main eventing the Omni. Okay? It's 3,800 fans. Guess who you're taking on? It's rock and roll. Chris Champion and Sean Royal again. Yes, and I have what happened. This is the main event, loaded with talent at the Omni, and it ended in a double disqualification. So you've told us before that the most of the time this is a weak finish. If you put your creative hat on for a moment, how does this match end? Why not have the Horsemen or Midnights beat the lesser-known talent with a distraction or a tennis racket or whatever? What are your opinions that you think about this ending with these four guys, again, Champion and Royal, part of this, in a double DQ?
Should have had clear winners. And I think, knowing what I know today about the business, it would have been Midnight Express over Sean Royal and the other kid.
Yeah, Champion.
And with the idea that Cornette, his opinion is they should be getting the title shot for the titles. They're already a superior team to everybody else. That should have been lurking in Cornette's mind, and that would have been like a visual aid to us for them to get an impressive win over those two guys.
I like it. And you know what? You said something there that you're absolutely right. You know, we talk about it now, hindsight being 2020, but you have from 87 on, my goodness, the experience that has been underneath your belt in terms of even just producing wrestling matches and putting matches together. And so it's kind of fun to ask you those questions, those hypotheticals, to see, hey, now Arn Anderson at this age and with this experience under your belt, how would you look at things a little differently? So,
Well, and I was looking at him strictly as a talent then. Now I look at it as what would you do storytelling going forward? What's going to benefit the story going forward? What's the best story going forward? And, you know, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and look back on stuff, but I look at it with a different eye now.
it's part of the fun of what we can do here now, going back and sharing some of these old stories. So there you go.
What ifs?
That's right.
Paul, I'm a huge fan of what ifs.
You never know, and it's just fun to speculate and have a little back and forth on it. But Arn, the next time we see you, you're on the losing end of a lumberjack match where you were defeated by Ricky Morton at the Coliseum in Hampton, Virginia. Were they? I hope they were booing too. Arn, we are 13 days into the month, and there's been no interaction with the Road Warriors on this loop, but every single television segment is building to this big match at Starrcade. Can you help explain to our audience the logic behind the dual programs during this time? And what I mean by that is you can have a TV program and a loop of matches that really have nothing to do with what's the storylines that are going on TV.
Well, you use television, number one, to build, in those days, to build towards your live events. You tried not to give anything away on television that would be a main event draw on the live events. You know, basically it was geared for heels to go out, get a very clear-cut win. And by the way, one thing, if you noticed, that was a double gourd buster, what we just saw.
Yes.
That's the only one of memory. I don't remember ever doing another one.
Oh, okay.
And the idea was, if two of us could get a hold of one of those Road Warriors, we can gourd buster him. And a double will be enough. That's the reason for a 16-second win. You know, we didn't normally do that. That was proving a point.
I like that. That's good psychology to share. That's good.
You know, just going back, there was a thought behind the process. What was the original question?
No, we were just talking about what it meant as far as the TV programs can be a little different than
Yes.
what you're doing on the house show loops.
Yeah, so you could go out and you could wrestle a guy you weren't in a program with and have a little TV program going there where you didn't hurt either guy and you got some good exposure and good competitive match. What you didn't want to do is give away too much on TV and have that same match show up in your live event. There was really no reason, especially if you had a clear finish on television, then I just saw it for free. Why would I want to take the family down and see it again?
Right.
You know, was the idea. You could have separate programs going with separate guys. And one thing that you will notice, because we'll have a few runs with the Rock and Roll Express, then the Arn will go back with Barry, and you know, it's just kind of skipping around. Once your talent were established as top guys, you could intermingle those guys, and they were still an attraction. And that was the idea. Once guys got over, you could switch the card up, and you could have thrown, at this particular point in time, Arn and Ronnie Garvin, former champion, or if he was still the current champion, or whatever the deal was. There was enough history that wasn't so long ago that Arn or Tully and Ronnie Garvin, any of those things would have worked.
No, absolutely right. Everybody was over, and sometimes when you'd see them make the save, we saw last week when Dusty and Ron Garvin came out to run in, and they all wanted to cover up Ricky Morton. Any one of those guys against any one of the Horsemen, people wanted to watch at that point.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Arn, the next day it's television, and the Horsemen were heavily featured on both World Championship Wrestling and NWA Worldwide. On World Championship Wrestling, you and Tully defeated Washington and El Negro, winning the match with the double gourd buster. So to your point, you're bringing in that double gourd buster, and after the match we were treated to, in the words of our favorite mortgage guy, what we all grew up on. And it's Tony Schiavone at the desk conducting an interview with Tully, JJ, and yourself. Here's the match, Arn, and then we're going to hear what the Horsemen had to say. Let's check it out.
Team champions, 2 of the 4 Horsemen, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, with their manager, J.J. Dillon. And they already start.
Quick, devastating, and above all, these 2 men are very, very confident. And David, I think that's going to be a big part.
They're beating on P.T. Washington there.
They really are. It'll be a big part of Starrcade. Who goes in with the confidence? Because regardless of who you are, you got to be a little nervous that night. It's a big night.
Little?
Well, you got to be.
Hey, you're going to be there. You're going to be nervous.
Oh, I'll be very nervous.
We're all going to be there. You are too. To watch the snap. I mean, tell us.
There's a face of confidence right there.
Breaks on the count. Oh, yes. He got it.
That's hilarious.
David, what?
Negro, a big guy.
For those not watching, it was the reverse atomic drop that got David going ooh and ah.
Look at this teamwork.
Well, there's another double gore buster.
There it is.
Telling the same story.
There's living proof right there.
That's a good sized man right there, too.
El Negro way up over 300 pounds.
Tony's selling it about how big he is, over 300
Yep.
pounds.
Helps the story, that's for sure.
The double gourd buster applied by the World Tag Team Champions.
All synced
Will
up
they be
nice
that
and
way
tight.
after Starrcade? Just going to have to find out.
2 of the 4 Horsemen, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, World Tag Team Champions. You mentioned you could gourd buster anybody, a big guy, and he did it just like that.
JJ, how much does Animal weigh? Animal weighs probably 280 pounds. How much does Hawk weigh? Hawk weighs about 272. Okay, neither one of them missed, guys. You just saw the double gourd buster executed by Arn and Tully, the World Tag Team Champions, weighs 350 pounds. Now, if you people think we can't double gourd buster one of the Road Warriors, you're sadly mistaken. Because Chi-Town East is exactly what it is. The hometown of the Road Warriors. And we're coming with all the gold, the limousine, all the prestige, all the glory. And when we walk out, we're walking out the same way we walked in. Because, big boys, it ain't talk no more. You got to come prove that you two are the baddest apple in the bushel. On a night, Thanksgiving night, when the finest in our business sits down in that dressing room with their feet up and they're lacing those boots up, pulling up those knee pads, wondering, number one, are they good enough to be associated with Cracker Promotions? Why are they fortunate enough to be in Starrcade? Number three, as the butterflies make them nauseous, they go to the bathroom and puke a couple of times, maybe 3, wondering what it's like to go out in front of 30 million homes. There's going to be careers lost. There's going to be bones broken. The Road Warriors have got every man that ever lifted a weight in their life sitting the edge of their seat saying, we want to shut up the Horsemen, and these 2 power lifters are the guys that can do it. You say you came from the streets, you came from the scum, everything you got, you work for it. Well, Mr. Tully Blanchard and myself are students of our business. We learn from everybody. We learn from Rhodes. We learn from the Road Warriors. Windham, driving rock and roll. We take a little bit of experience from each of you, and we learn from it. And gentlemen, I dare any man to come and take what the Horsemen got, because we worked for it, we earned it, and by God, after Starrcade, we'll still be champions.
James J. Dillon, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, more right after this.
Woo! Wow, that was some fire by you and Tully, my friend. You sold the event, you put over the Road Warriors and the rest of the baby faces, and then closed it in only the way you could, making sure everyone knew it was going to take a huge effort and a lot of man to take those titles off the Horsemen.
And I'm in it. And we felt it. And, man, things were building incredible.
I could feel it still today in 2022. That promo was strong ass fire, man. That was good stuff.
Man, it was just a time when everybody meant something on the crew. Everybody was so good. There were so many positive things you could point to. The wrestling industry alone was just on fire, and Jim Crockett Promotions was on fire. The Road Warriors were unbeatable at this point. You know, there was just, the Horsemen were starting to gain momentum, that group of Horsemen. There was just, Midnight Express were red hot. It was just, everything was coming together, it really was. You could just feel it. You could sense it.
Oh, yeah. You could sense it, feel it, taste it, all of it. All the senses were going crazy. But up next on Worldwide, you, Tully, and Luger defeated 3 enhancement talents by submission when Luger used the torture rack. And after the match, David Crockett conducted a ringside interview with the Horsemen, led by the Nature Boy, who shared his thoughts on Starrcade, and we have a clip of that. Let's check it out. Here we go.
Four Horsemen rule wrestling. Chicago's Chi-Town Heat, Ric Flair.
Yeah, the way I see it, what just happened right there is going to happen to the Road Warriors. 1, 2, 3. Then the package. Show them one time, Pack. Show it to them, buddy. Step aside. Dusty Rhodes. That, my friend, is what you have to climb in a steel cage with. The legend on the line. The big reputation. The notoriety. When the package, one of the 4 Horsemen, twists you around and puts you on the torture rack, Chi-Town Heat will be the end of your legend and the beginning of the total package. The Road Warriors, all done. Dusty Rhodes, all done. Who does that leave? Hands the stone. Ronnie Garvin. Well, Garvin, we know that you're the man now. You're the world champion. You and your cowboy boots and your jeans jackets, your pickup truck, your fat old lady, you're the man. But, pal, you got to walk the aisle. You got to walk the aisle and face me. Not only one of the 4 Horsemen, but your champion, your man, Chi-Town Heat. Bright lights, long limousines, pretty ladies, 10 million people watching, and the whole world knowing that these 5 people make it all happen. We make it go. And Bobby, believe me, nobody in this whole wide universe is going to take anything from the 5 of us without paying the price. You'll be the Pied Piper.
We're gone.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, I'm going to try to ask this in all seriousness. When Nate gets amped up like this, there's almost no one better, first of all. However, for you, you're standing in the back as part of this presentation. How difficult was it at times to not crack when he would go into these rants, fits, tantrums, or whatever else you want to call them?
Well, we would crack. Sometimes you just had to, and if you didn't, you're a stronger man than me. You know, that was not a conversation beforehand, who was going to talk and what order, any of that. We would just get out there and you would just kind of get a feel for it, and one guy would step up and get started, and if he was rolling, whether it was Tully or Rick or myself, we just let him roll, or JJ for that matter. You know, Lex, we tried to keep short, sweet, get a good shot of the body, let him have a little something to say.
Do the little flex,
Yeah, he was still learning. You know, the fact is, nothing was more impactful than just looking at the guy, for God's sakes. You know, what a physique. So it was hard to keep from busting up, but sometimes if you didn't bust up, it didn't feel real. To answer your question, we bust out laughing a lot of times.
I tell you what, man, so entertaining. You're all together, which I thought is always was brought the impact when you're all standing together there, nice and tall and strong. JJ looking dapper, looks like he got the locks cut and trimmed down there, so he's all sharpened up, ready to go for Starrcade. And here we are, we're moving on. It's the 14th of November. The Horsemen, they're heavily featured for CWF in an event that took place in the Roberts Arena in Sarasota, Florida. Dusty and the Road Warriors took on Flair, Luger, and Tully, and you worked underneath on this night, Arn. So that's how that would go. And the next time we see you pop up is November 20th. That night from the Brush Fork Armory Civic Center in Bluefield, West Virginia. You and Tully took on Ronnie and Jimmy Garvin in the main event. Again, back to our point, as we talked earlier, you're doing something different on those house show loops than necessary that's on TV, but you're taking on the Garvin brothers in that main event.
You know what I think I remember, and I think I've got the right time. I think this was around the time that we went down, and Tully and myself and Luger all bought Mercedes on the same day. Ooh. And I think it was during this time, it was like a day, it was either the day before when we bought them but I ended up driving the new one to Bluefield. And the reason I'm thinking it was this time, because now we're talking November, and all the roads iced over. Now I'm 150 miles from home, but I ended up having to stay over because I didn't want to take a chance on wrecking that new car. That's what I remember more so than anything, and having to, I called Aaron and I just said, honey, I mean, this place is kind of up on a hill and it's icing and they're closing roads and all that. I just don't want to risk it. And she said, no, stay there. But in those days, you would have never stayed 150 miles from home. You just wouldn't have. That's what I remember about that, even more so than the match, I think, was just those circumstances.
That's pretty cool. I like those stories that are not necessarily tied to an event and a match, but what else was going on in your life during that time? That seemed like a pretty big deal. Let's all go get some new Mercedes. Man, what a big time for you in your career. So we move on to Washington, D.C. It's the 21st of the month. All the Horsemen are featured at the Armory. You took on Ronnie Garvin. He's the NWA champion, losing to the man with the hands of stone. Tully, for his part, teamed with Flair, and they took on the Road Warriors, losing that match by disqualification. So there you go. There's a little Horseman Road Warrior interaction. And the main event saw Luger and Dusty in a bull rope match where the United States title was not on the line. Arn, we know WCW would make D.C. the setting for Starrcade in the 90s, but Jim Crockett didn't always run the nation's capital. Anything special, different, or memorable about working in Washington around this time?
Well, there was a lot of stuff that didn't have to do with in-ring action. There were some issues with running Washington, D.C. because a lot of people took the buses and the
public transportation stuff.
Public transportation.
Yeah.
And you had to have the show completed because that quit running at a certain time. And, you had to keep that in mind on how long the show went and things of that nature. And it was just a difficult place to get to. There wasn't a lot of parking or any of those issues. It was more a logistical reason to not necessarily run DC that much, that particular building. It was more logistics than anything else.
Well, Arn, on the syndicated shows that aired that week, you and Tully played a significant role. And on NWA Pro, you and Tully defeated Mike Rotunda and Ricky Santana. And I'm going to pause there, and I want to see, do you have any memories on how Ricky Santana was to work with? Any opinions on why he wasn't a larger star?
He was talented. He was. In those days, it started, the body guys, were starting to come into being, into fruition. There were more body guys. Ricky was not a body guy. He was more of a talented performer. Not sure how his microphone skills were, but he was just a guy that was going to be positioned in that underneath role, which, in those days, if you worked every day, you still made a nice living.
There you go.
But Ricky had skills.
He had talent. There you go. Well, moving on to Worldwide, it's you and Tully with JJ in tow, and you're interviewed by David Crockett about the big match with the Road Warriors at Starrcade. This one isn't just about the match, though, Arn. Let's take a listen. I want to get your thoughts after we watch this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, two of the four horsemen, the World Tag Team Champions, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon.
You know, David Crockett, not often do I agree with things that Dusty Rhodes says, but he's right. Every match at Starrcade is a hot match. A lot on stake, a lot of pride, and a lot of money, a lot of prestige. But he said all the talking's over with. It's time to get inside the squared circle and do it. And that's just exactly what we're doing. The Road Warriors hometown, AA. It's you and me and all the gold. Well, Mr. Crockett, first of all, I'd like to say, Tully and myself, along with Ric Flair and Luger, are where we are today through a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, going to arenas when we were hurt, when we were sick, or maybe we just didn't want to go that particular night. But our credibility as businessmen and professional wrestlers, we practice every day while we preach. We say we're horsemen 24 hours a day. That means we're dependable. It means our word's dependable. On this given night, there's going to be a lot of wrestlers sitting in dressing rooms with gut-wrenching thoughts. There's careers going to be made, careers going to be broke. There's going to be men going home, want to stick a pistol in their mouth and kill themselves because they lost at Starrcade. But the four horsemen have the largest audience in history to shine. And Road Warriors, I will assure you, this day and time, nobody's going to take what the horsemen have. Shot-town eat.
Let's go to the ring.
Wow. Arn, what a believable promo, my friend. You always had a way of making this thing that we love so much so very real and believable. Part of me thinks that the things you said in this promo were very genuine. Is this the real-life Arn Anderson with the volume turned all the way up?
Well, I mean, the closer you got, the more that particular show built, and the card and everything, it was real to us. We lived it every single day, we lived it. And the fact is, that was more putting the event over, going inside some of the guys' heads that were going to be in that locker room, and that was very real about, butterflies and all that. You don't think we had butterflies and nervous? We knew the Road Warriors were going to be amped up. Hometown.
I tell you what, though, Arn, it goes back to, and you and I had this conversation previously when I had asked you, I believe it was last week, about all these steel cage matches, and did you want to show up for them? You addressed all that in just that promo right there in that time. We're professionals. We're businessmen. We show up when we don't feel like showing up. That's what we do. You were putting your flag in the ground, telling the wrestling business, this is how we operate, and that was true. You meant every single word of it. So whether it was part of a promo or not, that's the code that you did live by, and there it was said right there in that promo.
Yeah, and prove us wrong. Name a time where we weren't there and we weren't professional, and that we missed a day for some half-ass injury. I mean, it's one thing to be crippled or injured to the point to where you can't perform and you can't be there. Getting hurt, we expect to get hurt every single day. And when you approach them, every match you go into with the expectation, hey, I expect to get hurt, then there's not many surprises.
Well, Arn, it's November 22nd, and Jim Crockett Promotions puts on a matinee show at the War Memorial Arena in Johnstown, PA, not too far down the road from where I'm at, in front of an audience of 2,000. You and Tully both had singles matches for this one, Arn, as you beat Robert Gibson at the 10-minute and 30-second mark when you cheated. Yes, sir. That's right, I said cheated by using the ropes for added leverage. Tully defeated Ricky Morton in his match in the exact same way, and according to the lineup, these were consecutive matches. So, Arn, why would the same exact finish be used against each member of the Rock and Roll? To be sure, this would not have been by design, or would it be by design?
Maybe the idea was that if we got away with one, they weren't looking for the second one.
There you go.
What do you think?
I think, too, you're heels, and that's what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to be cheating. You were supposed to be winning that way, and to show you're consistent in your approach as a team with how you both showed up and delivered the endings to those matches. So I like it. I'm buying it. I'm all in on the finish.
You answered your own question. Well done.
We're working together quite a few weeks here,
Well,
so I'm seeing how this works.
You're getting in my head, and you're living in there a little bit. And I think you kind of like it.
I'm liking it. I like it a lot. Yeah,
You're
it's good
digging
stuff.
it.
I'm digging it, man. Well, Jim Crockett Promotions would then travel on to Greenville the next day, November 23rd. And Arn, you were not on the card, but Tully, Rick, and JJ took on the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering in a 6-man tag team event. And the following day in Hillsville, Virginia. Hillsville, Virginia. There's a town I've never really heard of before. Arn Anderson and Barry Windham wrestled for the Western States Heritage Championship. Unfortunately, this was in front of a crowd of only 800. Maybe that's why I haven't heard of it. Windham earned the victory at about the 15-minute mark. Any memories of Hillsville, Virginia, Arn?
Straight up 77, north of Charlotte, about 100 miles. So it's a very small little town.
That's what I figured.
If it was 800 people, that was probably everybody in town.
The whole town came to the show that
Everybody
night.
was there, and it literally was such an easy drive, 100 miles up, 100 miles back.
Oh, you can't beat that.
The upside was not so much the payoff, but the fact is you got back home in a decent hour. That'd been a drive out of Charlotte.
And you'll take those every once in a while for sure.
Occasionally, yeah, you can blend those in.
That's
Sure.
right. That's right. Well, Arn, the good news is the next day you debut at the Nassau Coliseum in front of a crowd of 11,500. So we're way down the road from Hillsville. Now we're at the Nassau Coliseum, and it's a big turnout. For the past 3 or 4 weeks, JCP heavily advertised and marketed the event as War Games 4. And as we both know in this era, you can't have the War Games without the Horsemen, or in the case of this match, it's half of them. So check this out, and you may remember this very well. In the semi-main event, the Road Warriors defeated Luger and Flair by DQ, but as we mentioned, this event featured the War Games. Well, instead of delivering all the Horsemen as teased in the numerous segments on television, this War Games featured Arn and Tully teaming with the Midnight Express and Big Bubba. That's a whole lot of talent, my friend. And your opponents that night, NWA champion Ronnie Garvin, Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham, and the Rock and Roll Express. And the win came when Bobby Eaton submitted to the figure 4 put on by Dusty. How about that? You remember that any of that match at all, or that unique pairing for you in War Games 4?
I cannot believe that I don't remember.
Yeah, well, no, that's what we're here. I'll help you relive these memories if I can get the words out. It was loaded with talent. You got the Midnights. And they're as capable as anyone, but could you, I mean, my goodness, we also know Big Bubba would go on the main event with Hogan all around the country the following year. So lots of talent, but why deviate from the formula of having the Horsemen on one side so that the baby faces could get all of them their comeuppance?
I wished I knew.
Yeah.
I wished I knew the thought process. And you're saying it was advertised otherwise?
It was advertised as War Games 4, and every video clip that they show in the advertisements was all the old, was War Games 1, 2, and 3, which were the Horsemen all together. So it had just led you to believe you're getting another Horseman versus the baby faces, and that's just not what it turned out to be at this event. So
Because that feels like a bait and switch.
Yeah, it does.
If you were implying it was the Horsemen.
Right.
God, I wished I had the answer, because that one defies, especially it was a debut show in the market.
Yeah, debut, big time, 11,500 at the Nassau Coliseum.
You don't want to not give them what's advertised, so.
Yeah, but still, you had a lot of talent, like I said, and you agreed. Lots of talent in that one, but definitely a very interesting War Games 4 there. But Arn, we are finally here. Jim Crockett has arrived in Chicago. It's Thanksgiving. It's Starrcade 1987. There's 8,000 fans at the UIC Pavilion. And naturally, Arn, all the Horsemen are featured on the card. Luger and Dusty battled for the U.S. title in a steel cage match, and Flair challenged Ronnie Garvin for the big gold belt, also in the cage. Third from the top, we have the matchup we've all been building to for the past month. It's Arn and Tully versus the Road Warriors for the NWA World Tag Team Championships. Even though you're the champions, you are out first. Seemingly, this allows for the Chicago fans to welcome their Road Warriors. This pop is massive, as expected, Arn, and you've told us on multiple occasions that there was nothing like it when you were standing in the ring.
The term Road Warrior pop was real. It was a very real thing. When that music is so good, Iron Man, obviously.
Perfect for them.
When it hit and they came through that curtain with that paint and the shoulder pads and big as a house, power walking down that aisle, it was an event.
It was badass, man.
Yeah, it really was. I don't know anything that was any more badass. And that's the perfect explanation.
It was.
And, man, they came through those ropes and we had no problem scattering. You know, it was just one of those things that you just have to, the more violent and the bigger the sports city, the more the pop. You know, it was just like they got it. In Chicago, they got it.
Yeah, here they are in their hometown, so it's electric. And so we're gonna get into this match. So in this one, there's very little feeling out process. You guys get to the action quickly, and of course, you're starting the match. And inside the first minute, you climb the top rope. You hear what I'm saying, Arn? You climb the top rope. Nothing good comes from Arn Anderson. We've learned on this show, climbing that top rope, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's 50% at least something bad's going to happen.
Well, and it did, because Hulk military pressed you out of the corner. Arn, you're a full-grown man, and he pressed you as if you weighed nothing. Were you ever concerned about just how strong the Warriors were, meaning that they might mistakenly hurt you?
Oh, if they hurt me, it wouldn't have been a mistake. And yes, I was concerned every time they came down the aisle and I was in the ring. Big, strong. Like I said, when he pressed me, I would have probably been about 255 then, and it was, if I remember correctly, there was not a lot of effort put into it.
Isn't it something? Another grown-ass man just lifting you up, and I mean, you're just staring straight down as this guy just has you over his head. That's got to be like, wow, this is intense. This is crazy.
Well, it reinforced what I already knew. Don't go up top, so it's my own fault.
Well, the match continued with the Warriors using power moves on you and Tully for the next several exchanges. The crowd popped at every spot. Finally, about mid-match, you and Tully gained the upper hand when you clipped Hawk's knee. Well, he had Tully above his head in the military press. You and Tully worked Hawk's knee over, and at one point, Tully hit Hawk in the knee with a chair. In and out tags and double teams as you guys build the heat on Hawk, and you help you keep the advantage. There's a subtle spot here, but you cut Hawk off. Tully would lock in the figure 4 leg lock. Hawk refuses to quit, so you tag in and attempt a couple of pinfalls, but you're crotched on the third attempt. Hawk would make the hot tag to Animal, and as the action picked up, Blanchard runs into referee Tommy Young, knocks him out of the ring. Here we go, Arn. Then Animal dumps you over the top rope. Earl Hebner comes out. You roll in, get hit with the Doomsday device, and the Road Warriors win. Not so fast, my friends. Earl Hebner made the count, but Tommy Young reversed the decision because he saw Animal dump you over the top rope. We got this dusty finish, baby. The Road Warriors leave with the titles, and the crowd that was so hot for Hawk and Animal show their displeasure with boos and even chants of bullshit, Arn. We have the closing moments of all this. Are you ready to take a look at it?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it, buddy. Here we go. The ending to Starrcade 87. It's the Road Warriors against Arn and Tully.
He caught him, Jim Ross. Yes, the knee is hurting, but it's Arn Anderson in major trouble right now. There's a tag. Oh, what a drop kick by the 300-pound Animal. Tully Blanchard, Jim, you saw it. Bottom of your screen, grab the leg.
Blanchard tripped Animal. Anderson and Animal, I think I'm in. Tommy Young.
What a bump by Tommy.
Yeah, and that floor is hard too.
Nothing, no padding, straight concrete. He dove right out of that floor.
All right, there was your DQ.
Yep.
Now, that was a DQ. That was one of the rules. You can't dump a guy over the top intentionally.
Now Anderson and Tully care about the rules. I love it.
Yeah, this was no fun.
Oh! Doomsday on Anderson.
This could be it.
This is the pop.
Wow.
Tommy fixing to get that heat.
World Tag Team Champions. Now, it was Earl Hebner that made the... Whoa, what's going on?
He just raised the dead man's hand.
He did. That's it. And it went flop right back down.
Anderson went the Animal pushed him over the top. And that's what Tommy Young is
Look,
saying.
watch. Here we go. Oh, look at me show it.
He's going to take the belts away from the Warriors. And the Road Warriors are not going to give them up. We're going to walk out with the belts, Jim, and we're going to take a look at...
What a bump.
Watch Tommy Young.
What a bump, yeah.
I mean, straight through the air, right to the concrete. Oh,
to help things up.
no wonder he had a shortened career as a referee, unfortunately.
Here's your DQ.
Here's the move over the top rope. And Tommy Young saw it. He saw it.
Should have landed on the hip.
Look at Tommy Young's hand.
That's what happened right there. Tommy Young in the bottom of your screen making the call over the top rope. The Warriors disqualified.
Referee Tommy Young has disqualified the Road Warriors for throwing their opponents over the top rope. Winners of the match by virtue of disqualification and still World's Tag Team Champions, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson.
Tom Miller with the call, and there it is.
Great voice to announce bad news.
It was a great voice. Classic NWA Jim Crockett voice. I do want to add that Dave Meltzer ranked this match with the Road Warriors at 3.5 stars. This was the highest rating he gave any match on that show. A show, by the way, that included Barry Windham versus Dr. Death, as well as Ric Flair and Ronnie Garvin. You guys got the most stars in your match. Not sure if it means much to you, Arn, considering your humble nature, but Dave thought you and Tully alongside Hawk and Animal had the best match of the night. So there you go.
No, I appreciate anything, positive that somebody has to say about us. It's easy just to go with the negative stuff, but I think Meltzer understood how hard we worked to get those guys over and to make them the Road Warriors. And, the performance, I think, sometimes is as important, not all the time, but sometimes as important as the finish.
Well, Arn, I got a couple questions about this match, and as our boy Conrad would say, there's a lot to unpack here. So Tony and JR, which, by the way, I love hearing Jim Ross on the call there. He just adds so much flavor and passion to these broadcasts. It's so cool to hear him call the match. They sell Tommy Young seeing the over-the-top rope infraction as though the finish was clear as day. But, Arn, didn't it look like Tommy was almost a little out of position based on how he fell out of the ring?
Well, now you can't see what he's looking at out of his peripheral vision. Give the man, this man's a pro. He's been a wrestling official for a long time, right?
He has been. It all came together kind of quick there at the end, that's for sure.
And the fact that he made the right call. Since I see you're fishing for me to say, well, no, they should have did something. Hell no, we'll take it.
So it was the very definition of the dusty finish. I mentioned that already. But what would the harm have been in letting the Road Warriors walk out of Chicago with the titles? We've heard Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff allude to the fact that some wrestlers didn't need championships. I guess, is that the case with the Road Warriors? They just didn't need the belts?
Because, think about it for a second. Now the dilemma is, if they win, now you're gonna have to beat them to get the titles off of them. right?
Yeah.
This way, you avoided having to beat them. If it would have been a month later or 6 months later, somebody's got to beat them, because if you do DQs and stuff, they would have kept the championships. There was a conscientious, probably question and answer, who will benefit the most by being champions coming out of this match? The answer was Tully and I could go forward and make every team that we worked with better than what they were before they worked with us. And we knew that.
The other thing to note here, too, is as I was watching that is, I know it's a dusty finish, but if you're a person in Chicago, you still see the Road Warriors walk out holding the titles up. So you're still cheering for that in that moment. You know what I mean?
And they kicked our ass for 80% of that match.
So the crowd's still kind of half cheering and excited, and then they'll come back and announce you still are the champions. But they still got the crowd really hot and really excited for the ending to that match.
After that was over, nobody at home, in the arena, wherever, lost faith in the Road Warriors. Trust me.
That's
right. They got screwed on a given night, as raw as it was, dusty finish it was. But the fact is, they didn't walk out of there weaker than walking in, and that's the key. They were still the Road Warriors leaving that ring.
So let's talk a little bit also about what you mentioned earlier in the show, and that was the move from Starrcade away from Greensboro and Atlanta to Chicago for this event. And make no mistake about it, Chicago is a hot wrestling city in the United States and even the world in 2022. But at this point, for Crockett, moving it to Chicago, my goodness, do you feel like it just left a bad taste in the mouths of fans outside your traditional market?
I feel like Greensboro earned Starrcade, and they should have had it for as long as it went on. I just feel that it was a more than a big show. It was in a particular city at Thanksgiving time of year. It was just something big. Now, today, Chicago is probably the #1 wrestling city in the world as far as supporting different companies, different shows on a regular basis. I know they're awesome for AEW. It's the best market on earth, and that's not a knock on Greensboro or any other place. But it wasn't that then.
That's right.
And you got to consider what was the stronger market then, and I would say Greensboro.
Well, one more thing to touch on before we wrap up Starrcade. And up to this event, JCP always presented their major events in closed circuit. This was the first pay-per-view, Arn, from Jim Crockett Promotions. However, the WWF ran the inaugural Survivor Series the same day with a main event that featured Andre and Hogan too. In a power move, Vince strong-armed the pay-per-view providers into making the decision not to carry Starrcade by threatening to withhold the upcoming WrestleMania from them. This was something the pay-per-view providers were not willing to lose because of the success of WrestleMania 3. Arn, we have to acknowledge the ruthlessness of Vince McMahon protecting what he believed in and all that. But I want to hear about this move from your point of view.
Well, it did not surprise me one bit. I mean, we were in a bit of a war here, and you do what you have to protect what's yours. And Vince just had the jump on every other company as far as marketing, just being smart on utilizing his clout with the television stations and all those things and the buildings. If Vince went in and he said, "Hey, Crockett's wanting to run Madison Square Garden. I'm the only guy that runs Madison Square Garden," they would have said, "Yep, you're right." Or any other market that was his. He was very good at protecting what was his. Jim Crockett was the company that was reaching out and challenging him and moving into some of his markets and different stuff. None of us that knew the business would have said foul. Hey, it was what it was.
Yeah, it's business, and he is one hell of a shrewd businessman and continues to be one still today. And it brings some success, and I'm sure it burns some bridges, but overall, I would say he's done very well for himself in that regard. So,
Oh, God.
yeah. So Chicago, you mentioned it, fun place, happening place, still is today, especially for wrestling. Can you maybe share one or two stories or memories of your time in the Windy City? Anything that a big time memory from being in Chicago in your career?
Well, a college roommate and good friend of Rick's was Bruce MacArthur, whose family happens to own the United Center. They happen to own the Blackhawks and several other very large companies. And he was Rick's roommate in college and a friend of ours, and he was our host every time we came to town. So one time we're getting ready to leave whatever town we're going, that we're out on it's like an afternoon show where we're going to come to Chicago that particular night or something of that nature, to where we're going to have a little bit of downtime. And Rick calls Bruce, and says, hey, we're on the way, you got dinner planned and all that. And he says, yeah. He says, matter of fact, when you guys start landing, how about peeping out the window? Okay, which, I didn't really mean anything to anybody, but we're on that private jet. We're getting close. We start down, and all of a sudden we're looking out the window, and you're looking down, and you see at the private aviation, there's a Winnebago, and the general is standing on top of it on the tarmac and waving us in.
Wow.
Do you know how much stroke it took to do something like that? What a pop he got from the 10 folks on that private jet, man.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. And it really was. And, he was out of the way, obviously, but close enough you could tell exactly what was going on. And it was just one of those things that back in the day, it was surreal. But
just really cool experiences,
Yeah, it's something you never forget.
Yeah.
You got to get excited about saving people all those dollars. They can limousine ride and jet fly now with that extra cash.
And they can style and profile with a quick 10-minute phone call right now to 425-0105.
That's 425-0105. Woo!
SaveWithConrad.com.
That's awesome. Well, Arn, there were a couple more dates you worked after Starrcade, but frankly, nothing compared to the importance of Starrcade 87 and all the happenings we just discussed. So we're going to wrap this one up right there. And next time, it's December of 1987. We're closing out 87, and there is dissension inside the ranks of the Horsemen, specifically centering around one Lex Luger, who, with the help of the events that unfold that month, will become one of the hottest baby faces in 1988. Arn, that's going to be a fun review, December 1987. Looking forward to that one, buddy.
Yeah, different. It'll be different, yeah.
Well, listen, thank you all for checking out Arn. We want to make sure that you're supporting him. Arn, you have a big-time appearance down at WrestleCon in Dallas, right? March 31st to the April 2nd.
Cannot wait, yep. Look forward to seeing everybody. It's going to be a huge event for the fans. We've all been stuck inside with this, freaking dreaded disease. It's just been terrible. And we're allowed to get out now and live our lives a little bit. And this is going to be a huge event, obviously. And I can't wait to see everybody.
Man, that's awesome. Take advantage of this opportunity. You want to meet Arn. There's nothing like meeting the man in person, shaking your hand, sharing your stories, and he has time for everybody. That's what I love about Arn. So make sure you take advantage of this appearance and get to know him a little bit. You're right. Finally, things seem to feel like they're getting normal, at least from interacting with each other. And so you want to make sure you do that. Check out The Arn Show on Twitter and on Instagram, on YouTube. You can follow The Arn Show at The Arn Show on Twitter and at The Arn Show Pod on Instagram. And then on YouTube, The Arn Show for all the fun clips and the shows on video. Man, Arn, this has been another fantastic time. November 87, the Warriors versus Arn and Tully at Starrcade. Thank you so much, my friend, for letting me be a part of it this week.
Yeah, you did a great job. Glad to have you. Thank you. And I'll see you next time.
All right, we'll talk again next time. On behalf of Arn Anderson, this is Paul Bromwell. We'll see you right here next time on Arn. Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.